everyone. We hope this video is finding you healthy, safe, and in good spirits while everything is happening right now with the coronavirus. Right now, Matt and I are still in our berth at the Sutton Harbor Marina in Plymouth. We had our slip to book for a few more weeks anyway while the weather kind of settles and the sailing season begins here. So we're still doing well, kind of self-isolating, self-distancing, which actually hasn't been too different because it's been so rainy here that we haven't had the chance to get out a lot anyway, so we're still doing well. And as you watch all of your YouTube videos while you're at home, and if you caught our announcement the other week that we are going to be doing or planning a catamaran build back in the States coming up, if anything has affected that. And because, again, we let you in on this so early in the process, we are still in the stages of picking a designer. We are deciding between Grainger, Schionning, and Oram for the build, so we still have to kind of go through that. Some loud seagulls around here. Which, of course, there will be videos to follow that as well. And we'd be months away from ordering any kind of plans or kits to begin the build. So as it stands right now, we are still pushing forward as usual, and we'll have to see what happens later in the year. But for the moment, everything is looking like it should still go to plan. But we did promise you a live chat coming soon, so you could ask all the questions that you want to about this build. But we figured what might be a good idea before we do that is to actually take you through the process so you can get a good visual on what it takes to build one of these kit catamarans from start to finish, and what the upcoming 2 years of our lives are going to be like. We're getting 25-30 knot winds today. Winter is still here. So Matt is back at the boat, and he is going to take you through the entire process of building one of these kit catamarans so that we can then open up the floor to you for questions.
Well, as Jess said, today we're going to go over the basics of how this process will work. We're not going to get into a ton of details. This is going to be kind of a 101 level introduction to building a kit and the processes involved. While all three of the kits are a similar build process, there are a few key differences that we will kind of touch on in a later episode. For the remainder of the video, we'll be talking about composite panels. In this case, Jess and I have picked foam core. It's roughly about an 80-pound density for majority of the hull, and on that they're going to laminate a 600-gram cloth on either side, fiberglass cloth. It is roughly about 17 ounce for anyone in the US. It's going to be epoxy laminated, so we have picked epoxy as the resin choice for these panels. The beautiful part about this kit is each one of these panels are done in a professional environment. So it's not done in the shed. We're not going to be building them ourselves. They do it in a controlled environment. So it's professionals. They are infusing these panels or using a hydraulic press on pre-peg. So it is, each one of them is going to be perfect. Each one of these panels is going to be identical to the next, and it's something that's going to be that would be very difficult for Jess and I to actually do ourselves. So it's kind of the nice thing with this kit. And of course the fact that they route them out too for us. So we get to jump ahead, and we get to not have to deal with lofting or any of those extra steps. This video is going to be a photo montage of a Schionning Aero 1200 named Wild Things. Its owner, Christian, was very kind and has given us permission to use his photos. Kind of an introduction to show everyone what we're going to be doing for the next 2 years. And anyone who wants to skip the pain of a 2-year build process, Wild Things is going to be for sale soon. Christian's website, there will be a link for it in the description box. Okay, so let's go on to the build. We're going to fast forward through the design process and get to the point where we've actually already placed the order. Before the shipment actually makes it to the US, we do have to do a few details. We're going to have to find and build a construction site. So we need to locate a lot. We're going to have to build a tent or a structure to actually build this in. So there's permits, there's all other kinds of fun stuff. We need to get a build insurance. So that will be another step that we need to go through. And once it the shipment actually does arrive in the U.S. port, we are going to have to go through a freight forwarding service to get it to pass through customs and get it actually delivered to the site. The way this is going to work, we will get a 40-foot container, probably have for about 24 hours so we can unload it. Inside is going to be our entire boat. We'll have everything from, of course, all the panels to the epoxies, to finish it, the tape, the fairing compounds. All of those things come within this one massive kit. The panels, we should get about 100 panels. They're 4x8, so just like a 4x8 sheet of plywood. There'll be these massive stacks of fiberglass composite panels. Our first step is going to be gluing these together to make a hull length. So if we're talking about a 40-foot boat, we'll glue basically 10 of these 4x8 sheets together lengthwise. So we get 40-foot overall, 8 feet tall. And within that, we will have things kind of nested together. So on one panel, it may be just the side of the hull. It may have the bottom, the top. It may have even some furniture pieces in that. Kind of the beauty with this setup is all these things are nested together, so there's very little wastage. They've taken this program in CAD, looked at all the components, all the pieces that are needed, and tried to fit them all as neatly and tucked in as possible to get the most out of this without wasting fiberglass, without wasting core, without wasting our money, and making it, of course, easier to ship and easier to build as well. To piece all these panels together, these 100 panels together, we will have to do a little under 200 glue joints. That process, from talking to other builders, typically takes about 4 days to a week for a couple to do. So not a real long, not a real daunting task. But the nice part is, once we get them all stacked together, we can actually put them against the wall. We can organize this whole process. So instead of cutting them all out and having them randomly laying all over the place, we know that the outermost board is going to be the hull pieces. So as we need them, we can cut them out, cut the little tabs that hold them in place, cut each piece out, lay it down, and start gluing and start the process with it. There isn't going to be a lot of wasted time sorting through these things because they're all numbered, they're all labeled. The plan shows exactly where each one goes. It's a very, very good and organized system, as long as we keep it that way. And this is kind of one of the benefits of going with these pre-cut panels, is we don't have to go through the process of lofting. Lofting is basically taking your plan that you get from the designer, which is, a little small size, and laying it out on the shop floor and trying to make a full-size boat out of it. So there's math involved, there's sticks and things involved. We've done it before on a small dinghy build, but it's kind of a time-consuming process, and there's room for error in there. Everything's all pre-cut out, so everything's done for us. All that lofting is done for us. It saves us time, and it's going to save us quite a bit of money because hopefully we won't be making mistakes. All right, now we're on to the fun part where we actually see the hull form. The kind of the shape pop out of these flat panels. First step is going to be laying a strong back. That is a form, a base, or a foundation basically for the boat to be built on. Its whole point in life is to hold these bulkheads, kind of the skeleton of the boat in place, and make sure that everything's aligned and that it stays in alignment when we're putting on the skin, the hull part of it. The bulkheads themselves have indexes. It's little notches on either side indicating the waterline. So that's what the reference point that we're going to use. We will then set up a laser level at one end of the shop, and we are able to align each one of those bulkheads in order, in the perfect position, and make sure that there is no misalignment. Any misalignment now is going to reduce performance. It's going to change, of course, by changing the shape of the boat. It's going to kind of make it a wavy look on it when you look at it from the outside. And it's just obviously really, really bad to start off right away and screwing it up. So it's key to make sure that we get these things in place properly and held firmly. Next step is going to be laying our first hull panel. what we're going to be doing is we'll lay our keel panel down. It's one long beam, full length of the boat, across the top. On that, we will be putting two sides. So still below the waterline we're talking, but it will be the first three panels of our hull. So bottom and two kind of sides. Next up is going to be taping those together. We will be using 4, 6, and 8-inch cloth, fiberglass cloth. Again, this is 450 gram cloth, so about 12 ounce fiberglass and imperial. We'll be applying that. Right now is when building neat and taking your time is going to pay off. All of these steps, if we do it properly, we do everything the way that you're kind of supposed to without screw-ups, will pay off huge when it's time to actually fair the hull and make it look like it came out of a mold. If we're not careful and things get wrinkled and we drops of epoxy and so on and so forth, that's where you kind of create the problems. So it's going to be all about working very, very neat. It's going to be about working efficiently and laying everything out properly. So that's going to be the hard part, is making sure we stay organized when we're doing 40-foot or 45-foot long taping jobs. To help this, we'll be using a product called Peel Ply. It's nylon, it's polyester, it's a different type of cloth that you lay over the top of the laminate. Once you've rolled out your fiberglass, you wet it out, and you roll it out, you now apply or put Peel Ply over that surface. Its whole job is to key the surface and make sure that it's good if you do need to put an additional layer of laminate. It also smooths everything out. So the transition between the fiberglass and the hull is as smooth as possible. Once you remove that later on, you now have a good start for the fairing process. Once we have those bottom pieces under the waterline taped, glued, in place properly, now it's time to do the things that most people are actually going to see. The sides of the hull come next. On the inner and outer hull get glued and taped into place. Now, to save ourselves a bit of time later, and so it's kind of break it all up, we'll actually start the fairing process. So we'll go through, we'll apply a thickened epoxy with fairing compound in it. Depending on where it is, above or below the waterline, will dictate what type of fairing compound we actually use. But apply that over all the surface and start that basic fairing. Why we're starting it in these sections is so we're not really living that Groundhog's Day type scenario where we're spending 6 months of every single day doing fairing. This way we're kind of breaking it up, and a lot of these builds get abandoned because people slowly go insane with the sanding part of it. So we're avoiding that as much as possible, breaking it up into individual sections. Realistically, for the overall build time, fairing and sanding will take about a third of it. By breaking it up into these individual little manageable chunks, hopefully we can make it through and yeah, together and with a full boat at the end. Now, the beauty of it is once one of the hulls are built, now you got to kind of push it aside and you got to duplicate that whole process all over again. It can be fairly quick. The other benefit too is the psychological part of it, the fact that you are seeing this structure form in front of you, and it's rapid enough that you can kind of remember when it was just a pile of boards laying over there. After we've duplicated it and we've done the second hull, both hulls get pushed aside because we're going to need floor space and room to do our next step. Next step, building the cabin top, the part where the galley will be and the salon will be up on the top of the bridge deck. To do that, we, again, have a clean floor space. We're going to lay a strong back again, and on that, instead of using bulkheads, because there aren't bulkheads in this, we're going to use pre-cut plywood forms. Put those up in place just like you would a bulkhead, but on top of that, you build the skin of composite, and that's where we get our overall shape for our the top, for the cabin top. Again, we will fair that as much as possible, get majority of that work done. The other thing too is a lot of that is work that normally on the inside would be overhead. During this process, we can actually flip it over and work down below. So it's a little bit easier to sand, a little bit easier to do that. Once done with that, we set that aside and we move the two hulls back together. It's going to take a little bit to level those out and make sure they're perfectly aligned. Again, hugely important to make sure that you don't have one hull crooked to the other. So, of course, we'll spend a lot of time doing that and just making sure it's perfect. Then it's the process of the bridge deck, the pushing the two hulls together, putting that piece in between, that board in between, and now all of a sudden we have a catamaran. Where once we had two kind of canoes, we will have a full single boat. The next point is going to be installing bulkheads on the bridge deck, forward and aft. They are structural, so they are very important to make sure that they're, again, properly aligned. We just keep coming back to that. The alignment is going to be very important to make this strong and make this perform the way it's supposed to. So we'll make sure we get those things all aligned, glued in place, and reinforce. The midpoint, or the main bulkhead, is the one that supports the rigging. It's the mast and everything there. So we got to make sure that is strong and in place. Again, all the components, all the stuff are included within that kit. Aft bulkhead, or aft beam, really, we'll end up going through and doing that next. And then from that point forward, now it's kind of the other things. It's going through and finishing off the cockpit. It's putting on the cabin top, the aft bulkhead, which is where like the door is through the companionway for the cockpit to the salon. Mounting those things. The furniture can all be built off the boat because, again, they are pre-cut out. Build those all up, get them fair, and then put them in place and kind of glue them in place and tape to give them that shape then as well. Up until this point, everything we've done is things that are components, pieces that are part of the kit. They all have a marked position. They all are pre-cut. So you plop them into place, glue them, tape them, and you're good to go. There are three things that we do have to kind of build ourselves. We do have forms for them. We do have all the details, but they're things that aren't flat panel, so you do actually do yourself. One of them is the forebeam, and that you make out of Western red cedar typically. And it's got a curve to it, an arch to it, to give it a little bit extra strength. Again, the forms are there from Schionning, so you just make a strong back, put the forms in place, and then bend the pieces over that. But you are laminating it, so you are going through and you are applying all the fiberglass to these Western red cedar pieces. The other components are the dagger boards and rudders. We will be building those ourselves. The kit gives you the form, kind of, and tells you how to do it and the shape that it needs to be done in, but you sand the foam blocks down for it. In the case of the rudder, you sand the foam blocks down to get that shape and then laminate it to give it, of course, the strength. Same thing with the dagger boards and the dagger board cases. Dagger board cases, they give a female mold, and you put core in it, fiberglass it, and multiple times, and pop that out. That's your dagger board case. So this process, those things will take a little bit more time, but they're things Jess and I have actually done before. They're things that we feel comfortable with. At this point too, we will start cutting in the hatches and windows in the hulls and in the cabin top. Now, one of the things that's beautiful about doing these kit boats is the fact that you can spend as much time as you want to do everything right. Unlike the typical production boat where they just cut an opening and slap a hatch into place, we'll actually go through and backfill, dig out the core, so dig out the foam. We'll actually backfill with epoxy and put fiberglass strips in there, make a watertight and very strong type of construction. But it's something that we won't have to worry then. If we get a slight little leak in one of the hatches or one of the windows, it isn't going to ruin the rest of the structure like you get with a generic boat. That is really the key difference between these. Is It depends on the builder, of course, but majority of the builders that we see doing these kits are way above and beyond what a production boat is able to do, just for cost. You know, it's the time is free for most of these people, so they're going through and doing everything by the book as properly as you possibly can, and we plan on doing the same. And even though we tried to do as much of this beforehand, now is the fairing part, the worst thing. You take these long boards, long sanding boards, and you manually do it. There really aren't a lot of mechanical options. There's not a lot of electric or pneumatic options to cut down on this. It's manpower, or woman power, of course. They do call them torture boards for a reason. It is going to be months of backbreaking labor, but it's where the make it or break it point for if this is going to be professional looking or not. Up until this point, basically everything we've done are things that Jess and I have actually done before. We have experience with it. We've done all the laminating. We've done all the composite building, fairing, all those different things on either dinghies, hardtops, Dodgers, those types of things. Not in, of course, the scale, but it's all things that we've actually have done. We've got some skills here. Next step is one we're a little bit leery of, and it will take a lot of practice for us to get proficient at. That is going to be painting. We've rolled and tipped before. We have done a bunch of other things with trying to get a smooth coat, but on something like this, it really is going to take spraying. And we've seen it done 100 times, but we've never actually held up a spray gun and done it ourselves. So we'll practice until we get where we feel at least proficient at it, and then it will be tackling that job. It's going to be a huge part of it. We anticipate it's about $10,000 worth of primers and paints for both inside and outside. Might be a little bit high, but we're guessing high on everything, just so we're not surprised. But so it's a lot of money. It's going to be a lot of time invested in it. But it's going to make the difference when we're done of not looking like an amateur job. Hopefully we can get it down so it's perfect, just about perfect. No orange peel, no runs, all those things. But that's going to take some time. It's going to take a bit of patience. But hopefully we can find someone that has done this previously that can give us some good pointers. So the hull's painted, hatches are in place, windows are in place. Now the last third of the build comes into play. It's going to be installing engines. It's going to be electrical, all the mechanical items that need to be a liveaboard boat are now going to come into play. Good point is we really don't have to buy them until that point. So up until now, everything that we've done for the first roughly year and a half of this build has all been stuff that was supplied in that original kit, that original purchase. Now is time when we need to start spending some additional money and buying the engines, buying the fitting the hardware, the sailing stuff, and installing each one of those things. And again, roughly we figure that's going to take about a third of the build. They're doing the engines, electrical, plumbing, cushions, all those types of things. Once that's completed, we can tear down our shed, or tear down at least one end, and pull the boat out. You can finally see the light of day. We can see it from the side, its full overall length, and admire its beauty, hopefully. At which point we will then have to haul it, hopefully a short distance, hopefully we picked out a good lot, to its nearest water that we can kind of move it on. So crane will come, or flatbed truck, however we get it moved, move it, launch the boat, and then we'll actually do the rigging. So the final step will be putting up the mast, putting up the rigging, and all the sails and those types of items. Of course, we can't do that when we're in a little storage shed, so it is something that we'd have to save to the kind of the last minute. And then it's time to rejoice. It is time to party. It is time to go out and actually see what our new boat sails like. And it'll be a very, very long celebration.
And there you have it. That is the process that it takes to build one of these kit catamarans. We are still very excited about it, and I guess the next step would be to start looking at designs. So there's going to be a lot of videos coming up on that kind of thing, and hopefully some more on elements, because this is going to give us tons of time to finish up all of the necessary projects that we need to get her ready and up for sale and give you a proper tour finally. So make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and click the notification bell to always be notified when a new episode comes out. And we hope to see you in a few days at our live chat.
To pieces, yeah, I need it. Won't you bend them all?